what's wrong with youth sports today? Overbearing parents. Are the kids doing this because they really enjoy sports, or are they doing it because mom and dad want them to? To be honest, almost all sports are going that way. Today on the EOR podcast, our guest is Sandy Cohan, founder of Mental Edge Hockey, a high-performance mindset coach helping elite hockey players sharpen their mental game to match their physical skills. With decades of experience in sports psychology and player development, Sandy works with youth, junior, NCAA, and pro athletes to build confidence, resilience, and consistent focus under pressure. He's not just teaching visualization or affirmations. Sandy's approach is rooted in neuroscience, performance psychology, and a deep understanding of what it takes to thrive in high-stakes, high-speed environments like the rink. If you've ever wanted to understand what separates good athletes from elite ones, the Mental Edge is it. Sandy Cohan, welcome to the EOR podcast. Let's go. Sandy Cohan, welcome to the show. I want to start here. Might be a bit of a controversial topic, but like you said, there is nothing we can't talk about today. So I want to get to the hard-hitting questions right away. First question. What is wrong with amateur sports today?
Well, so I would put in amateur sports, anything, right, that's outside the pro level. So I think probably what you're referencing is I would agree with you. It's in the youth sports market.
Yeah.
And what I think is challenge number one is that there's become a gray area between what I would call participatory models, pick your sport, and developmental models, right? And I'm not saying either one's good or bad, but I think there's a lack of clarity there that kind of gets a little mixed up right out of the gate for both players and parents. I think that's number one. I think number two is there are too many parents, and this is just my experience, that have really kind of missed the boat on what is the goal, right? Like why are these kids playing? And there's nothing wrong with love of sport, learning life lessons. So I think success identification is a big one. Like, what does it mean to play well? What gets celebrated? Is this an activity? Should we be specializing in one sport? Should we be just be an athlete? Play as many sports as you can. So, and the third thing is, I think that parents, I understand this, they want what's in the best interest of their kid. And there's a very kind of gray line, I think, between when do you let your kid fall down, maybe fail, but teach them grit to get back up, versus the safety net of don't even let them get bruised. And that right there is I think that's probably where the challenge really starts. Pick your sport.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And I think there's multiple areas in which amateur sport, and when we talk about what's wrong with amateur sport, I mean, parents, that's one topic. You know, it's the politics in the coaching styles and how coaches pick their teams. It's the administrative side of things. But when you and I have enough rings in the tree, and by that I mean years on this planet, to
I know what you meant.
to know that I remember growing up and playing hockey, and this was back in the 1900s, so the 1970s in rural Saskatchewan in Canada here, and it was competitive, but when did it become hyper competitive? When did that the balance shift to hyper competitiveness and the keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, in terms of parents, and then the sports going year round? We talked about that pre-show. almost every sport now, when it gets to a certain level, and when I say certain level, I'm talking now 9 and 10 year olds in hockey, where
Absolutely.
it's year round training for these kids. And so when did this hyper competitiveness and the year round training, when did that really kick in? And do you think that's been beneficial or a boon to amateur sport, and in particular your sport, hockey?
So hockey has a couple different dynamics, right? So when I was growing up, I'm not going to say it was necessarily a blue collar sport everywhere, but it was kind of a niche sport, right?
Yep.
I've just turned 50 this past April. I would say now it's almost exclusively a white collar sport. It's very, very expensive. The cost to entry is very, very high.
Yep.
There's a lot of great things about that. There's also a lot of challenging things about that. Um, that it typically is more on the affluent side, right? A lot of families, maybe very successful parents. So they're used to development. They're used to more. They're used to training. That's kind of in the DNA. Um, I think maybe like early 2000s, I think really with the explosion of the internet, when all of a sudden the highlight reel, again, pick your sport, right? When that became so relevant, when it became a little bit more about maybe less at of what I'm achieving and more of watch me achieve it, get me notoriety for achieving it. And I think that kind of also feeds into probably, why you and I kind of do what we do. That from a foundational standpoint, I would say that athletes today are bigger, better, faster, stronger. But from like a wiring standpoint, whether it's IQ of the sport, in my case, hockey IQ, or just the grit or the toughness, those intangibles, it's a
Mm-hmm.
completely different athlete today. But I think it's like early 2000s. And ironically, that's one of the things that kind of got me moving into this direction is I was trying to understand, in hockey, um, there like any sport, but in hockey, there's that 14, 13, 14, 15, where a lot of families are like, are we all in on this, or like what direction are we going, right?
Right.
Because there's a lot of like life changes that have to happen. Um, and what I was noticing was, and I'm sure you've seen this too, is well, what is separating the ones who are making it, and when I say it, I mean maximizing their potential, right? Like ultimately, I think you and I are probably in the same business, that it's
Yep.
whatever ends up happening with the sport, whatever. If we're making great human beings in the process,
Right.
our sports are just the vehicles, right? Um, but it wasn't the talent that was separating it. And I know you playing sports, and I know this. Like I've seen thousands of people that were more talented than me throughout my career, but those aren't the ones that made it, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was something else. What's happening inside the helmet, right? Like how
Yeah.
can you control the controllable? So I know it's a long-winded response, but I think there's been a couple of things that have happened. And I think, the youth of today is different than when we were growing up. One's not better, one's not worse, but it's just different.
Yeah, I fully agree, and I want to put the blame on the Gen X, Generation X parents, which is you, which is me.
Yep.
We are the parents of Gen Z children, right?
Yep.
And the Gen Z generation, basically in the late 90s and early 2000s, were told, well, we as parents were told, this is how you raise your children. You build their confidence by daily affirmations, telling them how great they are, how talented they are, you're so beautiful and handsome, and all that. And what we created was a generation of kids who saw they were either nothing or they were everything, and there was no in between. We didn't focus on effort. We didn't focus on the hard work. It basically was you were either talented or you weren't. It was a fixed mindset generation. And these poor kids then hit the internet, and now they're being reminded daily of how far behind they are their peers in terms of sports, in terms of education, in terms of even their family socioeconomic status.
That's
And
exactly right.
yeah, and this is what I think has eroded the grit and resilience of the Gen Z student athlete, the children of Generation Z, is that they don't know how to handle adversity because they were told their entire lives that they were great, that they can be whatever they want to be. But given that huge open air of you can be anything you want to be, they froze because they didn't know what they wanted to do, and they became paralyzed by it. So
Yep.
when it comes to
I
sport, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, I agree with that completely. And I
Yeah.
think also I would add to that that somewhere along the way, where when we were younger, saw maybe an obstacle and said that's an opportunity to go around, go over, go through. Obstacles today have become like reasons to turn around and just
Yep.
hang it up, right? It's
Yep.
almost like you said, they're powerless. They just stall. They're
Yep.
just stalled in fear. And fear, I think, doing it anyway is okay, right? Like jump
Yeah.
in, be scared. That's fine. The
Mhm.
idea of these comfort zones, um, my dad always used to say that like that nothing good happens in comfort zones, right? And it's not till
Right.
you get older when you understand, right? That the magic happens in the growth zones. But in order to do that, like you got to take that first step. And what you said is right. We all want what's in the best interest of our kids, right? Like you want them to have
Yeah.
a better life than what we had. So that
Mhm.
balance of be gritty, there's a line somewhere. But like bruises are okay on the kid, like kids falling down, them stumbling, like
We don't see kids in casts anymore,
that's right.
right?
That's right.
Nobody climbs a
Um,
tree and falls off and breaks their wrist. Like it's like these kids have been so bubble protected.
or even just even the physical bruise or even like failure doesn't mean it's over, right? Like, and
No.
I this is so cliche, but failure is, it's a branch on the tree, it's part of the process. And the challenge, I think, always of seeing these highlights is like they don't see the 10,000 hours in the gym, the grind, the sweat, the doing it wrong, the failing, the getting cut from teams. They just see the tip of the iceberg, and that's their identity of success. It's, you know, thank
My
God we're so smart and we haven't figured out.
Yeah, I mean, my keynote speaking coach basically said, he said, don't get on stage and talk about your successes. He goes, get on stage and talk about your failures, because he goes, everyone's failed. He goes, they can relate to that. He goes, if you stand on stage and talk about all the great successes you've had in life, there are going to be people in the audience that tune out because they maybe don't feel successful. Maybe they haven't had the number of successes that you've had, and they're not going to be able to relate to it. And it's the same thing here. When these kids see these videos on, their peers, colleagues, other kids their age doing great things, it's like, yeah, but that kid, number one, everybody comes from a different socioeconomic status and background. Everybody has different
True.
resources available to them. Everybody has either a work ethic or not a work ethic. What you do behind closed doors is up to you, right? So you can control your attitude and effort. And that's what these kids don't see. It's literally just presented to them in the moment of, oh, look at the all the for football. It's like, all the offers I got from these football schools. It's like, but they don't talk about, the work you put behind it. So one thing you did say, and I'm trying to remember basically what it amounted to, but what do you do with Mental Edge Hockey? And you guys are based out of Jupiter, Florida. Mental Edge Hockey, what do you bring to the table for these kids in terms of developing grit and resilience? Because developing grit and resilience, let's say if you were working back in the 1980s, it wouldn't take much, because these are kids that grew up on the farm, small towns, and we're talking hockey
Absolutely.
now. And they grew up with it, right? How do you, Sandy, and your program Mental Edge change that for kids and get them to build that grit and resilience?
It's a good question. So we work with all levels of hockey players, right? Like when I first started this, it was mostly on the pro side and on the college side. And I think a lot of them, they didn't know what was wrong, just something wasn't maximizing, they weren't maximizing their potential, right? So much of what we do, a lot of one-on-one coaching. Our big thing is customized. We meet players where they are. And when I say mindset, and I don't typically use that phrase mental performance too much, because I think the stigma, anytime you put the word mental in there, everyone's like, well, I'm not broken. And even a parent's like, my kid doesn't need that.
Right.
Right. So mindset to me is very, very offensive, right? Like it's the foundation of the building, but it determines everything else. So we're
Hmm.
talking belief, attitude, grit, focus, emotional
Yeah.
control,
Growth
discipline,
mindset.
self-awareness.
Absolutely.
That's right. So I think the two most important are focus and grit.
Yeah.
And grit, the easy way I think is, fall down 7 times, get back up 8, right? But I really think it's introducing the concept of willingness to do hard things and adopting the mindset that it really isn't winners and losers, it's winners and learners, right? So it's this fail fast, move past mindset. So our big focus for me for years has always been, this concept of like, well, now what, right? Like right now is the most important moment. And through focus, we can enact grit, but it's now what? Like what the time for analysis might be later. We might love what we did, we might hate it, but right now has to matter most. So the more time we, I think, kind of work on what does success mean, that I know it's like the whole backbone of your business. And it
Mhm.
it sounds so over said, but everybody is so outcome focused, and it's like outcomes matter. But the irony, and I know you know this, is that focusing on the actions and behaviors that lead to those outcomes, like that's the way for growth. And I
Yeah.
think once you shift that, start to understand you can control what you can control, I think grit can start to be built because you feel like you're making progress, right? You can celebrate it, you can recalibrate. So I
And
think those are two really important things.
yeah, when I've done some speaking engagements to local sports teams, organizations, associations, and I keep basically saying the message is this: results matter. So recognize a result, but praise the effort, because that's the only thing that that child can duplicate. They can't necessarily duplicate the result because it's out of their control. So praise the effort. So the messaging that I get the coaches that I work with and parents that I work with to give their children are not things like you're so talented or man, you're so fast out there, because that's an ability based message, right?
Yep, love that.
Every child can be praised for effort that they put in regardless of talent level. And so I say use messaging such as, I saw how hard you worked on the power play. I saw how you made you went in the
Yep.
forecheck and just got the part, like the effort. It's all effort, effort, effort messaging. It's not that hard, Sandy. It really isn't. But parents, and really it's no fault of their own, because once again, Gen X parents, people in their 45 to 55 age, basically grew up being told, tell your kids how great they are, give them these messages that say they're talented, they're fast, they're smart, they're athletic, they're right. No, coaches, parents, this is coming from me, this is coming from Sandy, I'm sure. Praise your kids for the effort they put in. But I'm going to ask you a tougher question, Sandy, based on what I
Yep.
just said. What happens when you have a kid who, and you've seen this and I've seen it a ton, this kids that literally can just show up, skate circles around people, put in 3 goals a game, and this usually happens at the younger ages where these kids are happening, and they don't have to put a lot of effort in. So what's the messaging you tell that kid when you know they're not really putting in a lot of effort, yet they're head and shoulders above their peers in terms of talent and production?
So this I I'm not going to say battle this. I get this question a lot because a parent would say to me, just as you're alluding, is,
Yeah.
well, my son or daughter, these are their accolades. They don't need that, right? And I say this in my speaking, whether it's a room of 50, 500, 1,000, that talent is overrated, right? At some point, talent peaks. Everybody has game, everybody has jump. So, what is the separator, right? And the separator has to be what's under the hood, right? Like what is driving the engine? And I believe so strongly in this. So I just finished my second book about a month and a half ago. And the first book I wrote was 99 rules every
Yep.
athlete needs to know.
Love
The
that.
second book is 99 rules every sports parent needs to know. And they're quick, bold kind of rules. You can flip open to any page. It resonates. You can take some nuggets with you. That's a theme throughout, right? Of what you were just saying, that recognizing the effort, what should be celebrated. But I think at the end of the day, right, like these kids they don't need another coach. They don't want another coach. They want
Mm.
a steady parent. And the quintessential car rides to and from, right? Like I know very well intended, but
Yeah.
message isn't always received that way. So I think parents have to remember the legacy, right? Like the goal here is to raise somebody that eventually all of us, the jerseys get hung up, right? The mess goes away. So the person that you're raising, right? You're raising the person that can go into any room, anywhere that they go in their life, and they have belief, they have an attitude that's correct, they know how to generate grit, they can control their emotions, right? Like they understand what success means. So I wrote a whole book about it, and I basically was like, gosh, there's so many things in here of what have people asked me? What have I done incorrectly over the years? What do I not like? And the parents have been very receptive to it. I'm so happy to be able to have something that hopefully provides a little bit of clarity.
Yeah, I love that. And also the effort over results philosophy, totally the synergies between you and I and the mindset, and what we're bringing to the table here today in terms of the message is couldn't be closer. And I think it's very, and it took me literally, Sandy, until the last 4 years when my son went down to Arizona on a football scholarship to learn that effort over results messaging to my kid. Because when my kids were younger, we wanted them to be active. They were both athletic. My daughter was hyper athletic, and we kept praising her for how talented she was and how athletic she was and she won every swimming race and she could do anything. My son, a little bit struggled a little more. He wasn't quite as athletically talented. He was kind of like me as a kid, a little bit chunky, a little overweight, had some talent there, but he had to work harder at it. And we kept basically saying to him, keep working hard, buddy, you'll get there. Well, it developed two completely different teenagers. My
Yep.
daughter, once she got to a point where she was losing races and finishing last against better talent and so forth, she just crumbled, right? Couldn't handle the adversity, basically just wanted to quit, and it kind of forced her out of the sport of swimming.
Probably
Um,
killed you. It probably
yeah,
hurt.
oh,
As a
as yeah,
parent, it killed you, right?
yeah. And it's my fault, basically, and it's my
Oh,
wife's
like,
and my fault. But I mean, society too. But what I'm saying is that as parent, but then my son, on the other hand, was like, well, as long as I put in effort and mom and dad praise me just for my effort, I'll just keep doing that because I really can't fail because they don't care about the wins and the losses and whether I, made tier one or what have you. And the pressure that was taken off of his shoulders as he grew up, from the ages of 12 through 17 was phenomenal. And he blossomed from that. And so this effort over results mentality that I have and what I'm bringing to the table hasn't existed my entire life. I was very much suck it up, princess, like get out there and
yeah.
and
It was a
and
different
and
time.
yeah, it was a different time. We grew up in a different
Yeah.
time. But so getting back to what you message, and you mentioned the car rides, and every parent who has an athlete, student athlete, as a son or daughter has done the car ride.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
And man, I don't even want to remember the car rides with my kids but I do, and I regret a lot of them. And I think, I want to go back to the statement I made earlier, Sandy, about keeping up with the Joneses. And I don't understand where this hyper competitiveness, and I know we covered it earlier in the show, but when did parents feel like their child had to make tier one, right? Make the
You know what?
citywide all-star team
Yeah.
because
You
if
know
they
what it
didn't,
is?
they're going to be crushed.
Well, not I agree that that's the outward response, but I think it's different that I think our generation, and again, when you put on your parent hat, right? Like you want to protect your child
Yeah.
and give them the best opportunity. I think somewhere along the way, we stopped remembering that it's their journey and what they do, good or bad, success or failure, we can support, but it's not a reflection on us. Like if your
No.
child has a bad event or a game or something, somewhere along the lines, we kind of started to say, well, that defines us.
Yeah.
And it doesn't, right? It's not about us. Um, you don't need to be on the certain relationship with the coach. I mean, at some point, right? It's like the authenticity of the sports has kind of been tainted a little bit because of adults. When if you just let the kids go out and
Yeah.
play, it's like, all these things that we're talking about, a lot of them kind of go away. So I agree with you. Well intended, everyone's trying to do the right thing, but I think there's a combination of trying to remember that it's their journey, right? Like, don't dissect, drive the car. You know what I'm saying? Like, and try to steer thought. Every challenge or issue that a child raises,
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be solved. Maybe you can steer the thought. Gosh, that sounds crazy. Have you thought about how you're going to handle it? Right? Like we're taking them away from the you know what and moving them into solution mode. Um, because I think that's the job, right? The
Yeah.
job is have them grow and it grow into their own, support them. They got to want it. We can support their efforts, but I think for a healthy parent, a sports parent, um, if you care more than the kid, that's a bad sign.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
And I was gonna add to the generational conversation by saying that like the Gen X generation, we were the last generation of kids who were left home alone after school. Don't burn the house down. Mom and dad will be home at 5:30. There's some leftovers in the fridge. Just watch TV and don't get in trouble.
Yeah,
And the feral children of the streets, I call us. And
that's right.
we vowed to never let our kids be alone in the house, and we always
That's
took
right.
care of them,
That's right.
and we were going to protect them because and we also now are growing up because of social media and because of the internet, we're also growing up in what we fear is a scarier world because
Yep.
we're so exposed to fear mongering and everything in the media. And so we were going to protect our kids at all costs, even if when it came down to sports too. But I liked what you said about the conversation you have with your kid when you're driving home. It doesn't have to be directive, meaning, on that last power play in the third period, you really should have done this. Here,
No, 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 no. Yep.
no,
It's
like don't do.
and you gotta I understand when I take off, any other hat than the mindset coach. The best example, and it's kind of stuff in the book there, but is like don't say anything, right? Like, and 9 times out of 10, somewhere later in the day, the kid will come back to you and talk about his or her feelings about that play. And if we're trying to be underneath the umbrella of developing a great human being, they know when they make mistakes. They know. So what are we going to do about it? Are we either going to help them come back bigger, better, faster, stronger, or are we going to beat them into submission, right? We have a
So,
choice.
so Sandy, what would be, and you and I are not perfectionists and we don't know everything, but what would be a good way to handle a conversation with your son or daughter after a game? You're driving home, and I'll let you choose hockey just because, but I think it applies to all sports where a kid has either succeeded or maybe not succeeded in their eyes during a game. What's the conversation look like that you think would help that kid?
Question number one, hey, did you have fun? How was it? And I
There you
don't
go.
say that in like a cliche,
Right.
cheesy way. It's a great conversation starter. It puts you kind of in a neutral place. You're reminding them, that that is the goal here. I don't care what level. If it stops becoming fun, like do something else. And that's a pretty good lead in question, right? That's going to spark some sort of emotional response, right? Good. It stunk. I didn't like my playing time. So I think that's a good question because it allows the child to communicate and be heard.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the parent has to engage in
No.
what's being said, but it gives them the platform. So it's, I think, a lot of, yep, yep. Oh, I saw that. What'd you think? Did you like that? Right? You're kind of picking and choosing, never fully engaging. And then if they really dive into something that was really, really good or really, really bad, great. Any thoughts on how we can make that even better the next time? Like, what do you think? Or if
Mm,
they are really, really bummed out about something, why do you think that happened? Right? The coach was this, coach was that. You steer it back to, is there anything that you can do? Like, have you ever thought about what maybe you would do next time? Like, you're not scolding, but I
yeah.
think you're shaping, you said it earlier. I think you're shaping the concept of everything in life has to fall into one of three buckets. You
Yeah.
can either control it, you can impact it, or you let it go. The
Mm,
challenge, I think, for all of us as people, there's that gray area between the control and impact. When at the end of the day, the things that can be controlled are really just belief, your mindset, your attitude, your
yeah.
focus, everything else you can impact it. But to have the best impact, if we focus on the controllables, that's going to give you your best chance to have the best impact. So
Yeah.
I think it's a lot of steering and letting them talk and
Yeah.
not engaging in what is perceived to be a problem.
Mm.
Even if it is a problem, I think you move towards solution. I do that with my pro athletes. I mean, they're millionaires, guys and gals, they're 20s, 30s, some of them have kids. They're not idiots, but sometimes they have to vent, and
Yeah.
they need us to be kind of like the bumper, the boundary, like push them back on track.
Yeah. Well, and I think it also, as a parent, and especially the dads, it comes from a perspective of wanting to fix things immediately. And so
Absolutely.
the statements that come out of I'm picking on dads now, but the statements that come out of your dad's mouth when he would, when he was driving you home generally was, you should have done this. Even if you say,
That's
have you
right.
thought of, doing this? I mean, you're still directing the conversation and saying, well, this is how we fix it. And what I really liked about what you said, Sandy, is when the kid retorts or says, well, I'm not getting enough playing time, or the coach sucks at this. Yeah, you could jump on that bandwagon with your son or daughter, but then all that's doing is giving them more fuel to complain about the coach, complain
Absolutely.
about their teammates, complain about the ice was too warm, complain, right? And we got to change that. So the messaging has to be really critical. It's incredible that. So let me ask you this, Sandy. Like I said, it only was the last few years that I've come upon this way better growth mindset with my kids and how to develop them, and then all the clients I work with. When did it happen for you? Because I'm sure you must have been a hard-nosed grinder. I have to win. It's successes comes in wins and losses, things like that. When did it change for you?
Uh, I think that I really made the shift. Probably 2012-ish. I was working with a really, really talented group of college girls. They're very, very high level hockey players. And they were such like sponges for grit and trying to learn how to be like nastier, right? Like they were so skilled. Normally the best, best skilled on the ice. I don't care if it was boys on the ice, girls, but they just didn't have the wiring. Like they didn't know it was okay to be nastier, or they didn't know how to tap into it. They didn't know how to be more resilient. They didn't know how to be tougher. And like you said, it wasn't their fault. That's just the world that they grew up in. So I was like, gosh, like I wish they could see how much talent, one girl in particular. I'm like, I wish you could see how much talent, like from what I see. Like it's not your skill, it's something else. So what could I do to help outside of the on ice work that I did? So that's really when I kind of got deep into the mindset piece, and I'd studied it. I give so much credit to the many, many coaches that I had,
Yeah.
and being open to talking to people like you. Like, I don't know, I love other people's perspectives. You've been doing this. I love what you bring to the table. And I always thought that I would be a better tool for these young athletes with more perspectives, right? And so I think that's kind of when it shifted for me, because I'm probably like a teacher by nature. I always thought I was a hockey player, and to some degree that's my DNA, but it's the same thing that like for you. You like giving speeches, you like to be able to impact a lot of people, leave them better than when they got there, and to see people maximize their potential. That
Yeah.
that really is the key for me.
Well, and I don't think the message we're sending today, Sandy, is that, don't worry about wins and losses. Don't worry about,
No, no.
no, I mean, results still are there. Results still have to, goals need to be set. I mean, we still want to win championships, but it's how you get there and what you do on the way, and the team you build, and the collaboration, and the creativity you build, and that psychologically safe athletic space. I know we call it workspace in the work world, but the athletic space for that team to grow. And that's really what championship teams are built from. You can talk about
Absolutely.
all the talent on a team, but to be honest, I've seen teams. I mean, we've seen this at the pro level where they put together an all-star team of the best players on the planet, and they go out and they're not very good together because they don't have chemistry. They don't understand the roles they're supposed to be playing. They don't understand the collaboration between players. So I think it's really important for parents and other coaches to understand that team culture and the messages you send and that what you praise, which once again is the journey, it's the process, the effort. That's what gets you the results. We still want to win. We still want to win championships, but we can't be obsessed with that, meaning that's all you talk about. That's all the messaging is about what we lost last game. It's things like that. So
I agree.
go ahead.
100%. I also liken it to, it's like you see a leak in the ceiling, right? Like the work that we do is not just patching it up, right? Like we're trying not just to stop the leak, we're trying to prevent the problem from happening again. And when you
Yeah.
find out, like that's just where the water's coming out. Like the break in the pipe is way over there, right? So you got to kind of peel back. So my whole approach has been like, well, what if we start building the stable people throughout it doesn't mean that they'll never bump into adversity, but they'll have the tools to bounce back,
Yeah.
celebrate progress, be able to regulate, be able to analyze. I always tell players, I am perfectly okay with you being your biggest critic. Totally fine.
Yeah.
But there's a comma there that you also have to be your biggest fan. Those two things have to go together. And if you wouldn't say it to somebody else, you can't say it to yourself.
There you go.
And I think that has to be taught. No one taught me, it's just suck it up, and half of our coaches when we were kids, they probably should be in jail if they were doing that stuff today,
Yeah.
but it was just a different time, right? It was just stern. So I always
Yeah.
thought, well, what if we could build something that was stronger, not so they never have adversity, but they understand that it's not tough times that last, right? It's tough people last. There's a difference.
Yeah. And all the cliches, they actually mean something. I mean, that's why they're
That's right.
cliches, right?
That's right. That's
Um,
right.
what you're aware of the term imposter syndrome, correct?
Yep.
What do you see imposter syndrome in young athletes?
Yeah, a little bit.
And let me for our audience, because I know you
Yeah.
wouldn't understand, but for our audience, I define imposter syndrome as the feeling of how did I get here? Like I feel almost like a fraud. Like how did I make this citywide hockey team? How did I make the tier 1 team? Like they have this, they know they have ability, they know they have talent, but yet they seem to be surprised by their successes. That's imposter
Surprised.
syndrome.
Surprised by it and constantly trying to feel like they need to convince themselves
That
that they are worthy, right? So
Yep.
a big thing for me is we don't do any convincing. Like we're reminding, right? There's a big difference between the concept of trying to convince somebody versus remind.
Yep.
So one of the foundational things for me is, you know, I'm very, very picky with these two words, belief and confidence. Those are not the same things. And I try and suggest to people that they kind of think about, if you think about a tree outside, what you see above ground, that's confidence. What you don't see below ground, that's belief. So in that
Mm,
example, like no roots, no tree, no belief, no confidence. So this constant chasing of, I want to be confident, I want to be confident. Most times when a player says that to me, I don't care what age, what level, boy, girl, I can get them feeling confident in like 5 seconds, right? We're going to tap into a situation, a time when something was great, the greatest goal, the greatest tackle, everybody saw it. You put yourself back in that place, you remember how things went, and every single player like starts to smile, right? I'm like, you got a moment like that, right? How does that feel? And like, oh, it feels great. I said, well, you know what that feeling's called? It's called confidence. But the way we got there was tapping into belief. So I think a big thing, if I do see that, is reminding people, and these are the cliches, but thoughts are just thoughts, they're not facts. So if you start to bump into those thoughts, that goes the other way too. Like, what are is there any factual evidence to support that? Oh, well, I'm not worthy, or I can't do this. The amount of times I have that conversation with somebody where I say, I know that's what you're thinking, but do you have any evidence of you having an experience where you weren't able to find a way to make it happen or dig in, right? So I try to tap into the belief. And I say this now, it pains me to say this, but I see that mostly in younger girls. Most of my clients are females. Girls, I think, are very how, why focused. Boys were like simple, like just tell us what to do, right? We're very
mhm.
what focused. But I almost wish the boys, were a little bit more on the we and I wish the girls were a little less we, more I. It's somewhere in the middle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So I do see it, but I think it's a belief issue.
Well, and to add to that, Sandy, I believe confidence does come from belief, but that belief in yourself comes from action. And so, even if you want to call it action leads
Love
to
that.
belief, which leads to confidence. So, ABC, I just made that up right now. But confidence doesn't come from yelling affirmations in the mirror at yourself, telling you how great you are and I'm
No,
confident. No, it doesn't come from that. It comes from belief, but but a belief has to come from something that actually exists and is concrete, which is the actions you
yeah,
put in. And so confidence comes from action, not the other way around. Because there's so many young athletes that I work with, and hell, even coaches, parents, and business people that they think it's the other way around. They think that action comes from confidence, meaning I don't have the confidence to
right.
do that, so I don't do anything. And it's
That's
like,
right.
no, that's how you build confidence is by trying, failing. Maybe you try, maybe you succeed. Who knows? But until you actually perform the action, you'll never know. So I love that ABC. Yeah, go ahead.
Yep. No, I like that too. I think like perspective mindset shapes perspective. I think perspective builds belief. Belief fuels confidence. Confidence enhances performance. Right. So we're saying the
And then it's
same thing.
cyclical.
Absolutely. And if there's for some of us that process might take 3 seconds. Others it might take 10 seconds. Maybe for others it takes a millisecond. But the significance of that getting your thoughts to performance, like it has to go through that chain. If there's a break in the chain, that's typically when things go haywire. But I agree with you 100% that it's action, whether you're going to tap into actually doing or reminding yourself when you have acted before. That's a great way to build the belief. I have done before. I know I can, right? And that's so paramount.
Yeah. Let's get into the female male differences because and I'll give you a concrete example. When I was teaching and coaching back in high school, and this is 20 years ago, I was assigned the junior girls basketball team. So this is 14 and 15-year-old girls.
Yeah.
I hired my
Were,
wife. Oh
were
my
you
God.
nervous?
My God, I'll
Yeah.
tell because no, because I was coaching football at the time. So I came at it with a
Yeah.
football coach mentality. And what I
Yep.
recognized, Sandy, is that my wife, who actually played college basketball, I hired her to be my X's and O's.
That's
And
a move, right?
absolutely, and I was the rah-rah guy, right? And
Yep.
because the football coach. But one thing I recognized after the first few practices is my football coach approach yelling at him, being very directive and whatever. I had one of the other female teachers pull me aside and she goes, girls don't respond to that kind of stuff, right? I'm like,
N-
what do you mean? She goes, listen. She goes, you can yell at boys. It rolls off their back. They don't care. That's what they expect. Girls take it personally. And so if you yell at them, they will shut down. You've got to find it.
Absolutely.
You've got to find a different way. She also added, she goes, if a girl doesn't like another girl on her team, you will struggle to make them line mates. They will literally shut down and not pass to that girl. They will not cooperate with that girl on their line. Now, I'm not saying this is the universal truth, but women will put friendships and emotions ahead of team, like you said. And boys, it's like, I hate this guy that's on my line, but man, he puts goals in left and right, and we're winning because of him. So I'm going to put up with him for the game because we're successful. Girls see it differently. Do you find that in hockey too?
Absolutely. And we had a similar experience to exactly what you said. The irony here, if I start into majority of my clients are female. I don't know
Yep.
how this happened. I have like a lot of pro gals, a lot of college players. I don't know how it happened. Um, because when I first started coaching, exactly like what you just said, I was coaching as I had been coached, and obviously being a male, it was never to belittle, but there was a lot more tonality, right?
Yeah.
Like a
Yeah.
lot more energy. And yes, I feel like girls focus more on what's being said. Boys are focused on what's the decibel, right? And it's not that boys are simpler, even though sometimes we are, but
Mhm.
we're very what focused. Girls
Yeah.
want to understand how, why, where, how does their piece fit into everything else? So it wasn't until I made some changes that I think was able to kind of balance out my client list. Because admittedly, I was like, God, I'm working with a lot of high level guys. There aren't as many girl. Like, what's the deal? Um, and I actually prefer probably I probably have more of a hybrid style, but I know that I am a better communicator because of it. I'm a better
Absolutely.
listener,
Yep.
right?
Me too.
Um, my perspective has changed a little bit, so it's been amazing. But everything doesn't have to be emotion, right? Like people will listen, they want to learn, they want to get better, but just because you're the adult and football, hockey, very kind of tough alpha worlds, like just because someone is screaming and yelling with a whistle in their mouth, like that's not necessarily teaching. That's like, in some cases, like glorified, like controlled bullying. Like, what's the kid gonna say?
Right.
Like, no, like you're an adult, I'm a kid. So I think it challenged me to be a better communicator, and certainly my results got better because I changed my approach. It's the goal is to teach and to educate. And ironically, it was working with a bunch of female hockey players that got me to that place. I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I didn't know before.
It
Do
was.
do
It
you
was.
have a similar thing for you?
No, absolutely. It was such a growing moment for me to coach that girls team for 2 years, and to really, it changed the way I coached football too. And I think that was
That's
one of the
exactly right. Yep.
yeah, it was one of the little micro steps in my growth as an athletics coach, and then how I coached my kids later on as they got older. My kids were barely born at that point in time, but I saw it differently, and I loved what it did for me as a coach because it helped me handle the boys differently. Not that I
That's
got
right.
softer with them, but I found a little bit of that emotional side and how to trigger them a little bit better, and then with the
Absolutely.
girls, yeah, like by the end of season two, we won the city championship. The girls all loved each other. The culture was fantastic. So yes, I really appreciated working with it. And you know what? This speaks to things like DEI and companies. This is why we want many different types of people around the boardroom table. This is why we want different perspectives, different inputs, because it helps us as individuals grow, not just on the sports field, but in the classroom, in our workplaces, even as families. It's like understanding how other people think and operate, and it's not just gender. Now it becomes ethnicities. Now it becomes, all sorts of different things. And I love that about how I'm learning more in my 50s, and I feel like it's too late. But it's never
Yeah.
too late to start. I want to switch topics here. I want to talk about mental edge hockey and what you're doing in Jupiter, Florida. So, when did Mental
Yep.
Edge start? What was the impetus behind it? Obviously, you said that this goes back to 2012 when you started to do some specific coaching, individual coaching. But let's talk about Mental Edge, the origins of it, and what you're doing today.
Yep. Yeah. So mental edge from the work I'm doing now, this business is about 5 years old. I was doing a hybrid of this in my other kind of on ice business. I really just started getting so many people coming to me about things that they thought were skill work, on ice stuff or skating or blah blah blah. They were almost searching for what they thought the solution was when that really wasn't the issue. So it's been about 5 years, and the majority of my work is one-on-one. I do a lot of speaking and a lot of organizational work, like you do, but my big thing is customized programming, right? That it's very, very important for me if I'm trying to move the needle. We're meeting people, players, younger people where they are. It doesn't mean that we lower our standards or lower the expectations, but what we were talking about just a second ago, because I was going to ask you, do you think it made you a better football coach? I think it made me a better hockey coach, even with boys, because I learned how to connect better, right? So whether the connecting was maybe eye contact or listening or just being more present or more aware. So much of what we do now is helping people achieve maximum potential. Hockey's the vehicle for us. 99% of my work is done over Zoom,
Wow.
and we do customized programming, right? So it's, some of the pro guys and gals, maybe it's once a month. Some of the younger folks, maybe it's once a week, but have some courses out. But just trying to make a positive difference, trying to provide hockey players with the opportunity to have something stable and to truly understand that one, they got to have a dream, right? They got to have a why. What
Yep.
is driving them? And if they want it, go chase it. Go chase it without the obstacles, without the stigmas, without the fear. And they have to learn how to do that. They have to learn how to show up today and make today be about today. So that's really kind of the specialty for me, based here in Florida, but do a lot of traveling and have a lot of clients in Canada and Europe. So there is no early sometimes, there is no late. It's just like, you're there. But I love my work. Honestly, I can honestly say that I love what I do. It's a lot of kind of behind the scenes stuff, but being able to see someone go out and accomplish
Yeah.
something that you knew that they could, but maybe they doubted that they could, and then they exceed what they ever thought they could. I haven't run into a better feeling now at the age of 50. Like that for me is like genuine making a difference. So that's why it's so rewarding.
Yeah. I was thinking, aside from the Panthers winning the Stanley Cup recently, is there a strong youth hockey community in Florida?
Huge, huge, and getting even bigger. Yeah, so we're on the East Coast. We're about an hour and a half north of where the Panthers play in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
We're closer to like the Palm Beach, but Tampa
Right.
up on the
Yeah.
northwest. Hockey's big there. There are rinks popping up everywhere here, and it's really like the perfect storm, almost to what we were talking about earlier. That it's a lot of affluent families with limited resources in terms of facilities, right? So
Right.
they're building a lot of rinks. So it's exploding here all throughout the South. Certainly the Panthers have a big play in that, but the NHL does a lot of great things. USA Hockey does a lot of great things for exposure, but it goes back to almost the very first thing that we talked about. Love to hear your thoughts on it. I think the industry is stuck in the middle between where does participatory end and where does
Mm,
development begin?
right.
And I think a lot of youth sports have that issue because it's very hard to be both, right? You can't serve both masters, and it's okay to say that's not what we are.
Yeah.
But I don't know if everybody's figured out how to do it.
Yeah, it's a tough gray area because people and young athletes, especially hockey players and the parents of hockey players, struggle with um accepting that their kid may not have the talent to play at a high level, and then but then as soon as they are labeled participatory, or what do they call it?
That's right.
Recreational hockey, they call it
Yep.
rec hockey.
Yep.
All of a
Yep.
sudden it's like this insult. It's like a label that just you can't shake.
Can't shake
um
it. Can't shake it.
and that's I think and that's why parents are constantly trying to keep their kids talent level above water, so to speak, right? Because they don't want them to drop to that bottom level. But how do you have that conversation? I mean, how do you have parents that are growth mindset enough to know that, you know what, this is fine, this is good, it doesn't need to be competitive? But unfortunately, all youth sports, we're not just hacking on hockey right now, all youth sports are like that. It's all uber competitive. Almost every sport in youth sports is a year-round sport now. Even football
Any
has
any
become year-round.
anytime a parent tries to, and these a lot of the parents, if I deal with parents, I mean, their kids they tend to be more in the achievers side, right? I mean, they're skilled, they're might be good students, but I talk to parents all the time who are starting to compare out. I just very calmly, I say, you just have to help me understand, like, what is it that your son or daughter isn't right now that you think
Hmm,
something out like your kid's 13. I
good
mean, give me a
question.
break,
Yeah.
you know? Um, because and a lot of times it is what you just said, that the facts are the kid's great, happy, healthy, learning how to have good integrity, good character. They're having fun. They are getting better. They are developing. So it's like, well, what's the problem? Like, what's the issue? Well, they're not XYZ. And I say, I don't even know if XYZ is real, but you don't even know if XYZ is real. Like, if the goal is to play college hockey, there are so many colleges that are playing college hockey. There's so many. So I think a lot of it with the parents is when they start comparing out, I always kind of try to slow it down and say, well, help me understand what you're wherever you think your kid is lacking or is not. I don't know if they are or they aren't, but are you comparing them to a professional? Like your
Yeah.
kid's 13.
Yeah.
Like, let him be a kid, you
How
know?
often do you have those conversations with the kid too? I'm sure you do. Sorry, rhetorical question, but what kind of
Yes.
conversation is that with with the athlete where, the parents are saying, well, they need this, this, and this, and the kid's going, I kind of don't like hockey.
Well, can I tell you something?
Yeah.
Yes, I do have that conversation. And for me, I never coached teams. I wish I could say I was smart enough when I first started that I only wanted to be in like the skill development business. That's just kind of where I fell. But in hindsight, I love that because I have never had to toe the line for an organization or a team, right? I literally get to look at parents and players all day long and say, look, and I mean this, my only interests are in the best interest of you, parent, you, player. I don't care who you play for next year. To be honest with you, I don't care if you say, you know what, you've helped me build great confidence or belief or whatever, and I'm going to go be a piano player. If you're happy and we untap something, great. So I do have this conversation a lot. I don't have to carry that load, so I can
Mm,
have pretty frank conversations. But whoever the player is, it could be a pro. I'm always asking about fun. I'm always saying, "Do you love this? Do you like it?" We doesn't mean that we're going to stop doing it, but
no.
I want to also let them know that it's okay to not know what you want to do or that you're going to chase this as hard as you can. You hope it ends up somewhere big. I just want to help them maximize it. So I do have those conversations. I'm not a dream killer, but I think that I can provide a lot of insight that, I think if that's what you want, I'm not going to say you can't do it, but this is the DNA of what that looks like. So, we would have to make some changes. But if I don't feel like the person in front of me has a desire for next level greatness, again, that could be become a vet, professional hockey player, whatever it is. If I don't see that, that gets me a little nervous. And I don't mind saying it to not to belittle, but to say, I don't know if this is for you. I don't know if this grind is for you. Doesn't mean that you're a bad person, but go don't carry the burden. Go spend your time doing something that you love. Like, what are you
Yeah.
chasing this for if you don't love it?
I believe that burnout in all arenas, and I don't mean hockey arenas, I mean in sports and business and life in general, all burnout comes from trying to fulfill the expectations of someone that's not you. Uh,
Absolutely. I could not have said that better.
yeah.
That's exactly right.
People don't
Do
get
you do
burnt
you
out
do you
from
see it a
jobs.
lot?
They get burnt out from the expectations of their leaders and of the people who are running that program, regardless of the program, right? I see it a
And,
lot in
and how
business for sure. Yeah.
and how they see themselves in that situation, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Their
do
self-worth
they
is,
that's right. Tied to what they think somebody else is. That you're exactly right.
and this is where the effort over results philosophy basically battles that, is that your employee's self-worth, your child's self-worth, your athlete's self-worth, your student's self-worth in a classroom all hinges on how they feel about what they can control and what they can be successful at in their own minds, not fulfilling the expectations of the teacher, the coach, the parent, or the boss. It has to come from the expectations of themselves. Now, people are going to argue, parents are going to push back and say, well, my kid doesn't know what's good for themselves. Okay, maybe they don't. Maybe at the age of 6, 8, 10, maybe even at 15, they don't really know but there's a difference between, and I learned this myself because I was that parent. There is a difference between having an expectation of your child to continue to just improve on themselves, be 1% better every day, however you want to call it, continue to just work and put the effort in, and forcing it upon them for them to be, the best hockey player in the city, for them to be the top employee and produce the best results and sign the most contracts and have the most sales, for kids to be 90% students when they really are only a 55% student, but they put the effort in. It's always someone else's expectations that cause the burnout. If you love what you do and you're having fun doing it and you have a great environment around you, burnout doesn't happen.
I don't agree. I think if it does happen, it happens to like older guys like us where the body's broken down and we just can't
Oh
hack it
well,
anymore.
physical
Yeah, yeah,
burnout for sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I think where people leave and burn out mentally, where they
yes,
check out almost like I'm just done. Like, and they say the
yeah,
average student athlete or young athlete, amateur athlete leaves their sport at the age of 13 on average. It could be less or could be a little bit more, but largely it's for girls. They say it's largely because they hit puberty, they find other interests that are more female based, and I'm not sure getting to the whole gender thing right now.
yep,
But for boys, it's largely because of bad coaches, bad leaders, bad programs. It's not the sport.
yes,
My son
no,
thought he was burnt out after 5 years at Arizona, at University of Arizona, and he realized that it was more the environment he was in, not the actual
absolutely.
sport itself.
Yep. And that for me, I've always had like a visceral reaction to that. That if a we see that a lot in hockey. Same thing. Right around that time for girls, it's like, gosh, there's other things in life here. Is this, I either got to be all in or you can't dip your toe in.
Yeah,
Um, but it's what what is the ultimate goal? Um, what are we trying to accomplish? And I think more times than not, if an athlete says, you know what, this isn't for me anymore, I'm totally okay with that. But if it's because of an environment or because of a coach, because of an adult, I have a visceral reaction to that. I hate that. And sometimes it might be that the player just says, you know what, I want to go do something else, which I think is fine. What I don't like is that if they don't have the grit, if they don't have the tenacity, their immediate response is to kind of pull the cord and quit and run away. I want them to attack and make sure, hey, is this the right decision? And it might be, but make sure it's the right decision because you feel it, you believe it, not because some clown or some whatever, is a bad communicator, a bad coach,
sure.
and you spend so much of your life grinding and so make sure it's the right thing.
You know
Yeah,
what?
it's a bummer.
Thank you for that clarification, Sandy. I appreciate that because yeah, I didn't want the message to be that. Well, if you're burnt out because you have a bad boss, coach, teacher, whatever, just quit and leave. That's not the message I was sending to my
Yeah, I
audience. So
know.
please,
I
yeah,
understand.
it's more around. It just isn't working for you. It's actually making the sport less enjoyable. It's making working in that environment less enjoyable.
That's right.
And so that's yeah. So thanks for clarification on that. I love it when my guests push back because I want to have those debates. Let's start to wrap things up here. Let's do a little bit of a rapid fire thing. What's your best memory from hockey growing up? Before you started Mental Edge, before you got into the coaching side of things, hockey growing up.
Probably being in the New England state championships. Maybe it was my senior years, a great group of guys. We've been together for a long time. Really achieved some great things. Didn't end up winning, but I still remember the crowd, the packed house, and it's just you don't know what you don't know at that time of your life. So there was
Yeah.
no worries. It was a good memory.
I love how in the States hockey is school based. Like the high schools will have their own teams, and it's like the state championship is this high school. Like, and in Canada, it's all club teams, right? I love I still love high school sports. I still think it's one of the greatest things. In college sports, to me, is one of the like literally, it's sliced bread. It's the best thing on the planet. What is one myth about mental training that you want to bust?
One that it doesn't mean that you're broken, and
Mm,
mental toughness is not the same as what I do or I coach, right? Because if you say your mental toughness is not just sitting there and being able to take a beating, that doesn't mean you're tough. That just means you can take a beating. So I think mindset is something that's offensive. We don't flip that switch when or if things get bad. I would love that switch to be always on, and that starts to steer where you end up.
yeah,
But
yeah.
you're not broken. It's not something for people who are broken. It's the opposite.
Okay. If you had a room of 100 youth hockey players, let's say between the ages of 9 and 12, boys and girls, what is one message you would walk off the stage that you would say to them to have them continue to love the sport and to continue in the sport?
I would say two, if you let me. Well, you
Yeah.
know what? I could sum up with one. I would say that the elite are elite, because they do act like, perform like, train like, conduct themselves like, grind like the elite. It doesn't just happen by accident. There is a backstory and it requires the grind. That would be number one. And I would say that number two is that achievers don't deal in expectations. They know that standards and expectations aren't the same thing. They deal in standards, right? There is a way in which they carry themselves, think, conduct themselves. You can guide them, but nobody has to tell them, hey, you got to be at the rink an hour early. They're like, I'm at the rink 2 hours early. That's how I do things, right? So I think those would probably, there are others, but I think those would be the first two. And if I had to sneak a third one in there, it would kind of be, I would say that problem reporters are always problems. Your problem solvers, those are your achievers.
Yeah. Yeah. Just yeah, and don't see problems as the end of the road. It's really just another challenge. It's another opportunity to get better.
Absolutely. Yeah. Fear doesn't mean stop, right? Fear means go. Like, you can trust that you're going to make good decisions, but fear, I think it means go, like step on the gas,
Yeah, lean into it and find out what you're
lean
about.
into it. There you go.
There you go.
Love
Hey,
that.
ladies and
Love it.
gentlemen, Sandy, you know what, parents, if you're a parent, coach, or athlete looking to gain that extra edge, don't just train harder, train smarter. You can learn more at mentaledgehockey.com. You can follow Sandy on Instagram at Mental Edge Hockey. Sandy, any other social platforms that we can find you at?
Those are the two big ones. It's all the same stuff on Facebook and TikTok and all that, but Instagram, that's the big one.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Sandy Cohan, for being here today. I'm hoping to have you on in a few months from now. We'll find out what's going on. Good luck with the books.
Anytime.
Good luck with the books. And once again, folks, if you're looking for great hockey coaching and mental edge hockey coaching, not just in Florida, because like you said, you do most of your stuff online, anywhere in the world,
Everywhere.
Sandy's the guy to go to. Thanks for coming on the show today, Sandy.
Thank you. Awesome stuff.